My name is Rebecca Cole. I stepped into our 20-year high school reunion, clad in a simple navy dress, and in just 5 minutes, it became clear that, to them, I had never truly achieved anything significant. The valet offered only a fleeting look in my direction. I whispered my gratitude, secured my clutch beneath my arm, and glided through the elegant double doors of Aspen Grove Resort. The chandelier above the lobby sparkled with an opulence reminiscent of a grand palace, just ostentatious enough to make you acutely aware of your outsider status. All were gathered within. The sound of laughter danced in the air, accompanied by the warm swell of applause and the cheerful clink of wine glasses. Even before the concierge presented me with a name tag, it displayed Rebecca Cole in a plain serif font, lacking a title, distinction, or any sense of importance. It must be Chloe's influence, without a doubt. I continued to keep the ring from West Point hidden beneath my sleeve. Yet, it went unnoticed by all. That's precisely how I envisioned it. The grand ballroom unfolded like a scene from a play, with elongated tables adorned in soft ivory linens, floral displays highlighted by extravagant crystals, and a magnificent 6-tier cake sparkling atop a pedestal. At the forefront, a grand screen displayed a montage of cherished moments. A spirited group of debate club cheerleaders embarked on an exciting class trip to Washington, D.C. Chloe found herself woven into the fabric of half of them. I might have been in about 3. As I stepped in, my younger sister, Chloe Cole, was already captivating the audience from the stage. She donned a striking red sheath dress that exuded confidence, and her voice flowed through the microphone with an enchanting charm. After 15 years with the Department of Justice, I am thrilled to share that I have recently taken on the role of Deputy Director for Western Cyber Oversight. She laughed, flipping her hair with a playful toss. But I will always remember the beginning, right here at Jefferson High. And naturally, I must express my gratitude to my sister, who is here with us this evening. For her unwavering authenticity, the audience laughed softly, uncertain whether it was meant as a praise. I stood my ground. Chloe had a remarkable ability to turn praise into a powerful tool. I discovered my name at a distant table. Table 14 is situated near the buffet trays and conveniently close to the exit. The names at the front tables gleamed in gold. Dr. Hartman, CEO Wong, Senator Gill, and Chloe Cole. I settled into my seat, devoid of a centerpiece, and a half-eaten shrimp cocktail on a communal platter. From across the room, Jason Hart's gaze found me. He remained quite similar, still towering, still self-satisfied. He approached, drink in hand, impeccably dressed, and leaned in with a smirk that still held a hint of youthful mischief. Becca, he said with a gentle confidence, are you still out there in the desert? Or are you just going through the motions in Kansas? Now I forced a smile. It's wonderful to see you as well. Jason, he chuckled softly. Oh, lighten up. I'm just teasing. But really, didn't you pursue pre-law? What transpired? Before I could respond, a woman adorned in pearls leaned in toward another guest and whispered, just loudly enough for me to catch her words. Didn't she leave law school? Regret. Endless possibilities await. Melissa Young drew my attention from across the room, her presence unmistakable, even from 3 tables away. She offered a subtle smile. I handed it back, uncertain whether it conveyed compassion or support. It's likely a combination of both. The dinner crowd grew denser. Servers glided seamlessly, presenting prime rib and scalloped potatoes with precision. Chloe arrived with grand gestures and a radiant smile. Oh, Becca, she murmured. So happy you could join us. I barely recognized you in that. Navy. It's merely a dress, I remarked, with a hint of nostalgia. You've always had a sensible approach. She inclined her head slightly. It would be great if we could have a conversation sometime. I can only imagine the wealth of stories you hold. Just the ones who keep to themselves, I answered. Jason came back, this time with 2 of his classmates by his side. A sun-kissed woman in a soft blue suit narrowed her eyes at me. Hold on, were you in the military? Absolutely. I recall you departed after your 2nd year to join the service, or something like that. A man behind her let out a sharp, unexpected laugh. Oh, so you served in the military. What does it matter? Similar to a clerk or a mess hall supervisor. Many gazes shifted. Some chuckled softly. Jason wore a playful smile, his eyes sparkling with mischief. Chloe remained silent. I lifted the glass to my lips and took a refreshing sip of water. The glass quivered gently in my grasp, yet I maintained my composure. The atmosphere thickened unexpectedly, as if the very weight of the world had changed within those walls. Yet I refused to be dragged under. I rose silently, smoothing the sleeve that concealed my West Point ring, and regarded each of them with a composure forged through years spent in war rooms and hidden bunkers. I offered a subtle smile, responding softly, something like that. Then I strolled to the balcony, where my encrypted phone emitted a quiet ping. They perceived a mere nobody in a bargain dress, yet I had once delivered a briefing to NATO while wearing that very dress, concealed beneath a military coat they were completely unaware of. The wind outside wrapped itself around the edges of the balcony, as if it were attempting to listen in on secrets whispered within. I lingered for some time, my posture upright, gaze fixed on the shadowy treetops that danced above the golf course. The glow from the resort spilled golden hues onto the grass. Yet in this secluded spot, where few chose to linger, a serene silence enveloped the air. Such a stillness was a rarity in my life. Amidst the noise of triumph, tales of achievement surged once more. Joyful laughter. Cheers! Another slideshow frame glides into view, showcasing Chloe with the debate team. Chloe in front of the White House. Chloe at Harvard. The door behind me opened with a hiss. Jason, there you are, he said already, halfway through his next scotch. You always did like standing on the edge of things. I didn't answer. He leaned against the railing too close. You know, he started to voice casual. You really used to have a future. Valedictorian track, debate team prodigy, Harvard Law practically begging, and then poof Army. He laughed. Still can't wrap my head around that. His laugh hadn't changed. Same clipped arrogance, same need to feel one step ahead. It pulled me back to the last time we stood this close senior year. The dorm hallway, still smelling like burnt coffee and laundry soap. I had told him I'd accepted West Point. You're kidding. He had set his jaw tightening. The military. You're throwing this away. It's not throwing away, I'd replied. It's choosing something bigger. Yeah, he snapped, bigger than me. And then he walked out. No goodbye, no call, just vanished. Now 20 years later, here he was, again, still resenting a choice that had nothing to do with him. I didn't disappear. Jason, I said, my voice calm. I just stopped explaining myself. He scoffed. You always did like cryptic answers. I turned to go, but he caught my arm gently, just enough to make me stop. You could have been someone. Rebecca, I looked at him. I am someone, just not someone you'd recognize. Before he could answer, the door swung open again. Chloe, Jason, she called that faux breezy tone she used when she wanted to be overheard. They're asking for the golden trio picture. Come on, for old time's sake. Her eyes flicked to me and her smile widened. Oh, Becca, didn't know you were still here. Thought you might have ducked out early, like usual. Jason dropped his hand from my arm. Chloe approached, looping her arm around his, like it had always belonged there. Anyway, she continued brushing a non-existent speck off Jason's jacket. Everyone's dying to know what our class's only DOJ appointee and its most successful real estate developer have been up to. I told them you two are still deciding who wins the power couple crown. She laughed, but there was something pointed in her glance at me. Jason chuckled awkwardly, clearly unsure whether this was flirtation or performance. Chloe's eyes sparkled. And Rebecca, what are you up to these days? Still, somewhere hot. I'm in transition, I said simply. Oh, she said with mock concern. Not out of work, I hope. I manage fine, I replied. Just not from behind podiums. She tilted her head. Always so mysterious. Her smile tightened. But I guess not everyone likes the spotlight. She turned, then tugging Jason back inside her heels, clicking with satisfaction. I stayed there a moment longer, letting the wind thread through my fingers. The bar lights from inside painted slivers of gold across the floorboards. I wasn't angry. I'd spent too many years learning how to feel everything and show nothing. Eventually, I re-entered the ballroom. The room had shifted into after-dinner mingling, smaller clusters, now more drinks, looser tongues. Melissa was at the edge of a group, near the bar, nursing a glass of wine and watching. I joined her. That was painful, she murmured. I smiled faintly. Which part? All of it, she replied, then added, you look better than them all. By the way, I doubt they'd agree. Doesn't matter. Truth doesn't need a majority vote. I appreciated her. She didn't pretend to know everything. Didn't rush to fill silence. She simply observed. Across the room, Chloe leaned in close to Jason, whispering something that made him laugh. When she caught me watching, she didn't look away. She just smiled. Didn't she used to follow you around like a shadow? Melissa asked. She learned to outshine me. Instead, I said. Before she could respond, a gentle hand touched my shoulder. I turned. Mr. Walters. He looked older, grayer hair, thinner frame, but the eyes were just as sharp as they were when he taught AP history. He wore a navy blazer, khakis, and that same crooked half smile that used to precede a surprise pop quiz. Meh, Cole, he said warmly. I was hoping you'd be here. I heard about your military service. I nodded. Thank you. Mr. Walters, you wrote a paper on asymmetric warfare in my class, he said. I still remember it. Brilliant work. I blinked. That paper had been a late-night act of defiance, written after a phone call with Jason had left me in tears. I remember, I said softly. He leaned in slightly, voice lower. Tell me, did you ever serve in Ghost Viper? I've heard things. They thought I disappeared into obscurity. In truth, I disappeared into national silence. I locked the hotel room door behind me and exhaled slowly, letting the buzz of the reunion fade into a faint thrum beneath the thick walls. The room itself was unassuming, faux crystal lamps, cream-colored carpet, a folded bathrobe on the bed. It looked like it could belong to any guest. That was the point. I slipped off my heels, crossed the room, and reached under the hanging navy dress bag. Beneath it, nestled inside a black, hard-shell case with no markings, was the reason I still woke up every day with purpose. I flicked open the latches. The interior glowed faint blue. A fingerprint scan, retinal scan, voice confirmation. Cole, Rebecca, clearance Echo 5. A soft chime. Then the screen lit up secure comms online. A flurry of data populated the display. Threat indicators, unresolved protocols, Project Merlin status, active breach containment. I skimmed the latest assessment. 4 red zones, 2 possible internal actors, 1 breach point, matching the blueprint I'd flagged 6 weeks ago. Still no resolution. A message flashed, incoming Cole Ellison, J2 Cyber Command. I tapped the screen. His face appeared square-jawed, midnight stubble eyes, like he hadn't slept in 2 days. Ma'am, he said, not bothering with small talk. I've just come out of a debrief. Situation's changed. They want your eyes on the Merlin intercepts. ASAP. I didn't blink. Joint Chiefs unofficially. Officially, it's an advisory consult. But let's not pretend this isn't critical. We've got a NATO partner compromised in internal chatter, linking the breach to Phoenix Protocol files. A pause. Then his voice softened slightly. Rebecca, they need you back in D.C. by Monday. I stared at the blinking map overlay. 4 red zones. Yes, but there was a 5th just starting to pulse. I can't leave yet, I said quietly. Understood. But if this escalates, it will? Ahori said, cutting him off. It's already in motion. He looked at me like he wanted to argue, but didn't. You've got 48, he said. After that, we extract whether you're ready or not. I'm sending intel briefs to your secure cloud. The screen flickered as the call ended. For a moment, I just sat there, the glow of the case humming beside me. The hum had become a comfort, not because it was peaceful, but because it meant I was still needed, still in the fight. Akaim, new secure message, Pentagon. Forward liaison. Subject, urgent. Standing authority update line. Direct extraction possible if urgent. You're the fulcrum. I closed the message. I already knew what it meant. If Merlin collapsed and the intel leak spread to civilian grids, it wouldn't matter whether I was dancing in a ball gown or kneeling in a war room. I would be pulled out. The fulcrum wasn't a title. It was a tether. I stood stretched, then walked to the window. Outside, the lights of Aspen Grove still sparkled like a painting too polished to be real. I could hear music again. Soft jazz now followed by a DJ's voice, booming something about a class slideshow. 20 years ago, I'd sat in that auditorium with Jason, Chloe, and Melissa, listening to our valedictorian speak about legacy. I remember clapping politely, even smiling for the yearbook photo. I never imagined my legacy would be silence. 15 years ago, Ghost Viper deployed on a mission so sensitive, we burned every scrap of planning material afterward. We succeeded. But at a cost? 3 agents never came home. Their names didn't make the news. I gave the final go order on that op. I was the youngest to do so. No medal, no citation. Just a single line in an encrypted server operation completed. No attribution. Debrief sealed indefinitely. I carried those silences like medals no one could pin. Now they needed me again. I turned from the window and began to pack. Not much. Just the case, 2 devices, and a dress uniform folded beneath a false bottom panel in my suitcase. My fingers lingered on the coat sleeve, where a single silver star rested just above the cuff. I didn't plan to wear it yet, not until I was ready. I have one thing left to settle before I leave. 48 hours. Outside music from the reunion resumes. I look out and murmur, one last night in the shadows. I wore no medals, but I carried more scars than anyone in that ballroom. The ceiling of the grand ballroom shimmered with thousands of glass fragments, casting golden specks over polished tables and champagne flutes. The room buzzed with rehearsed nostalgia and curated success, like everyone was performing a role they had waited 20 years to play. The class of 2003 had aged into its power suits and practice laughter. I sat near the rear, again table 14, flanked by 2 former varsity swimmers, now in venture capital, and a woman who ran a skincare empire out of Beverly Hills. None of them remembered my name. They smiled politely, then turned back to each other. I didn't mind. It was safer this way. The band hushed. The MC, a balding man with a booming voice who had once been the prom DJ, stepped to the microphone, and now he beamed our highlight of the evening, the 2003 Most Distinguished Alumna Award. The votes were unanimous this year. She's smart, accomplished, and a rising star in federal service. Please welcome Deputy Director Chloe Cole. The applause was thunderous. Chloe ascended the stage like it was built for her. Her scarlet dress caught the spotlight perfectly. She took the mic with both hands, pausing long enough for the room to still. She didn't look at me, but her voice reached through every corner. Thank you all. I'm honored and a little stunned. I'm just doing my job. But I guess over time, we see who rises, who leads, and who simply watches from the wings. Laughter measured polite. She continued, I want to thank my mentors, my team at the DOJ, and of course my high school teachers, especially those who encouraged ambition over conformity. They taught me that serving is admirable, but leading, that's where real change happens. Another ripple of applause. She smiled as if she just solved a riddle, then added, I think we all know someone who chose to fade into the background, and that's okay. Not everyone wants or can handle the light. I didn't move. My face didn't flicker, but I saw Melissa look at me from across the room. Not with pity, with something sharper. Disbelief. Jason, a few tables up, stood with his wine glass raised to Chloe. He declared our own Iron Lady proof that leading from the front beats hiding in the shadows unless you're peeling potatoes on a base in Nebraska. That got a laugh even from people who didn't understand the reference. They just followed the rhythm. Chloe smiled modestly as though the toast embarrassed her. Melissa didn't clap. I looked at her again. She was biting her lip. The MC returned. Let's hear it for Chloe. And hey, any generals in the room tonight? No, guess not. Well, maybe next reunion. Huh? Laughter again. I rose quietly. No one noticed. I slipped between tables, my heels silent on the carpet. Jason called out after me. Hey, Rebecca, wait. I didn't mean I kept walking. There was nothing left for me to hear. The hallway was cooler, dimmer, far from the lights and curated memories. I moved past framed photos of our senior year homecoming theater plays, awards nights, and into the vestibule where the air held less expectation. Outside, the night wrapped around me like armor. The sky above Aspen Grove was velvet black, punctuated by stars I hadn't seen for days. I took a breath, then my encrypted phone buzzed in my clutch. Extraction cleared. Helipad. EETA. 6 minutes. They said my life had amounted to nothing. But then the sky began to shake. I stood alone near the edge of the lawn, past the clusters of fairy lights and string quartets, past the perimeter where the photographers had stopped shooting, and the voices had begun to soften into polite, well-oiled networking. Beyond the trellises, the night was quieter, cooler. My heels pressed gently into the damp grass, and I tilted my head upward to watch the stars. For a moment, they reminded me of the sand-colored nights over seas of field maps, lit by filtered moonlight, of a silence that meant danger, not dismissal. Behind me, the echoes of the reunion still clung to the air. Chloe's acceptance speech, Jason's wine-soaked joke, the MC's final laugh. In their eyes, I had exited the story already. Unimportant, forgotten. I once told Melissa, years ago in passing, I don't need them to clap. I just need them to see. I hadn't meant for that moment to arrive this way. The wind shifted. A low rumble started soft at first, barely distinguishable from the ambient hum of generators and distant traffic. But it grew. Waiters paused mid-step. Someone looked up. A few guests glanced around puzzled. Then the lights on the grass flickered white dots, replaced by harsh, concentrated beams from above. A sound cracked through the air like thunder splitting sideways. People gasped, trays dropped, glass shattered. Napkins flew. From the northern tree line, a dark form emerged, angular exact, a military helicopter matte black, slicing the sky with precision. Its rotors thundered as it hovered above the lawn lights blazing into the crowd. Screams of confusion. Phones out. Someone yelled, "What's happening?" A mother pulled her child close. Jason shielded his eyes. Chloe's champagne flute tilted spilling gold down her dress. The helicopter began to descend rotors, kicking up a cyclone of leaves and petals. Guests stumbled back as hair and ties whipped in every direction. The string quartet stopped playing. Cameras flashed not out of joy now, but confusion, fear. Then it landed. The door opened. Colonel Marcus Ellison stepped out in full dress uniform ribbons, gleaming under the floodlight. His boots crunched the gravel path as he crossed the lawn, head high, pace unhurried. He didn't glance at the crowd. His eyes were locked on one thing, me. I didn't move. I stood straight, arms at my sides, the wind pulling slightly at my navy dress. For the first time that night, I didn't feel underdressed. I felt exactly as I needed to be. Ellison stopped 3 feet away, squared his shoulders, and saluted, crisp, deliberate, impeccable. Then he spoke, a voice projected over the stunned silence. "Lieutenant General Cole, ma'am, the Pentagon requires your presence. Immediate briefing." The words hit the air like a detonation. Someone gasped. Another dropped a phone. A wine glass shattered. I heard Jason's voice behind me, barely above a whisper. "No." "What?" Chloe stumbled back a step, her mouth frozen open, her eyes wide and glassy. Melissa was the first to move. She stepped forward, breath caught, then whispered, just loud enough to carry, "Oh my God, Rebecca." They all froze as Ellison said the words. Lieutenant General Cole. I had never spoken my title aloud in public, but now it roared through the silence like thunder. The last vibrations of the helicopter blades rumbled through the earth like an aftershock. The air had gone still again, but not silent. This was the quiet of stunned disbelief, of neurons failing to catch up to what eyes had just seen. Colonel Ellison handed me the folder, black embossed, sealed. His voice dropped, just enough for only me to hear. "Target movement confirmed 2 hours ago. Pentagon wants eyes on intercept recommendations. Merlin's window is narrowing." I nodded once. "Anyone dead?" "Not yet, but that won't hold." From behind him, I heard Chloe's voice crack through the frozen silence. Wait. Did he just say, "General"? All eyes shifted to her. She stood barefoot now, having lost a heel in the chaos, clutching her clutch like a lifeline. Her dress sparkled beneath the floodlight, but her face was losing its sheen fast. "Rebecca," she repeated, voice rising. "You're in the military." "But I thought you thought I was peeling potatoes in Nebraska," I said calmly. Jason stumbled forward, still gripping his wine glass like it might anchor him. I didn't know," he said. General, I had no idea. I thought you'd dropped out. Law school, West Point. I didn't even." He trailed off as the cameras started flashing. Melissa stepped beside me, her hands trembling. "I don't understand how you hid this." "I wasn't hiding," I said. "I was serving." Somewhere in the crowd, someone started clapping. Just a few hands, Then more. A ripple of confused, unsure applause rose and faded like an orchestra missing half its instruments. But it was enough. I took a step toward the center of the lawn, where voices had started to rise in whispers, questions, fragments of disbelief. I didn't speak loudly. I didn't have to. Some people wear uniforms loudly, I said. Others wear them quietly. That doesn't make us any less visible. It just means we serve without needing to be seen. Ellison gave a nod toward the helo. Ma'am ETA, 1 minute. I turned to Melissa. Her eyes shone now, not with pity or confusion, but with awe. You really are the fulcrum, she whispered. I smiled faintly. Sometimes silence is a blade. Jason tried again. Becca, please can we talk? I was wrong. I didn't see you. That's the thing, I replied without turning. You never tried to. Chloe stood off to the side, arms crossed, chest heaving. Her expression had frozen not in embarrassment, but calculation. As the crowd shifted, phones raised and whispers became captions. She quietly pulled out her own. One quick swipe. She opened her podcast app, tapped record. This is Chloe Cole. She began in a low-controlled voice, live from Aspen Grove, where some very interesting truths are unfolding. Behind me, the rotors kicked up again. Ellison guided me to the helo, and the ground fell away beneath my feet as I climbed aboard. Flashbulbs snapped. Faces blurred beneath the growing cloud of wind and debris. Some still clapped. Some stood frozen. Some pulled out their phones. As we lifted off, I caught one last glimpse through the window. Chloe, eyes burning, still recording. By the time my boots touched Pentagon ground, the internet had lit up, and Chloe's voice was already echoing across my inbox. The secure door sealed shut behind me with a pressurized hiss. Inside the skiff, the silence was dense, thicker than noise. The digital haze of Aspen Grove had been replaced by concrete walls, muted lighting, and the hum of threat matrices crawling across classified screens. I shed the last fragments of reunion perfume at the threshold. Here it was sweat data and urgency. Colonel Ellison briefed me while walking briskly past rows of terminals. I was already scanning the contents of the secure tablet he'd handed over logs from a breach surge near a Baltic server farm. Half-matched encryption markers, suspected disinformation clusters, tagged Merlin adjacent. General Monroe's waiting, he said. I didn't pause. We turned into the operations suite. At the end of the room stood Monroe, imposing unreadable chest, adorned with a full career's weight in ribbons. Cole, he said, voice taut. I've seen the chatter, both from inside the wire and outside. You still good. I'm focused. Sir. Good. Because I need your eyes on the disinformation vector. This one's political and personal. He passed me another dossier. A projection flicked on behind him. Maps lighting up in pulses. Timelines crossing with hashtags. Last 48 hours, he said. Merlin's breach patterns correlate with the sudden viral trend involving your name. Civilian networks picked up a podcast that blew your profile wide open. I stiffened. Chloe, correct. The episode's called My Sister the Myth. Released less than 12 hours ago, already re-uploaded by 24 alt-media channels. I didn't need to listen. I knew the cadence of her voice, the precision of her passive aggression. We need to talk about military narcissism, she'd once joked years ago over wine. Now she was building a brand around it. Monroe continued. She accuses you of weaponizing rank for validation, calls your Pentagon presence a narrative move, claims you ghosted your own family, and now return in full uniform to steal the spotlight. And the public? I asked. Splitty replied. You've got veterans calling her ungrateful, but influencers are picking it up. TikTok edits, Reddit debates, hashtags trending, sister in shadows, real Rebecca, hashtag warrior or PR. I exhaled slowly. Sir, I'd prefer not to engage. You don't have a choice, he said. The civilian info ecosystem has become a secondary battlefield. If someone's tying your name to Merlin, it's not just gossip. It's an opportune chaos vector. I nodded, understood. He looked at me, something unreadable flickering in his expression. You know who you are. Just don't let them redefine it for you. Back at my desk in the secondary skiff hub, I scanned my secure inbox. There were over 90 media requests. Anderson Cooper, The Atlantic, even a satirical late-night host who wanted me to read mean tweets in uniform. I ignored them all. Below the requests came the other flood. Comments, hate mail, DMs calling me a fraud, accusations that I faked my rank for a public stunt. Some even said I was an actress, not a general. One video looped me stepping into the helicopter. The caption, Deep State Cosplay. I rubbed my temples. A red alert pinged on my screen. Civilian disinformation sensor flagged Rebecca Cole as active target. Risk level 4. 5 initial vectors traced to pseudo news outlet. Citizen Circuit source uploaded hours after podcast drop. She hadn't just called me out. She'd fed me to the wolves. I stared at the screen. Chloe didn't understand what she'd unleashed. Or maybe she did. A message pinged from my personal line. Melissa Zhang, voice note 1, 7. I hesitated, then pressed play. Her voice came through low. Fast, you need to hear this. Rebecca, I just talked to Jason. He told me something about Chloe, something she deleted years ago. I think it's connected to what's happening now. You need to know. I thought silence would shield me, but sometimes silence gives liars all the room they need. The windows of my temporary DC office looked out over the Pentagon's inner courtyard. But the view offered no relief. Everything felt too bright, too sterile. The walls were lined with framed commendations and a clock that ticked with military precision. But time didn't feel linear today. It bent curled around memories I hadn't unpacked in years. Jason sat across from me, his knees bouncing slightly. He was wearing a suit, but his tie was loosened and his expression was frayed. I should have told you sooner, he said. I should have said something back then. But honestly, I didn't think it mattered. I watched him carefully. He looked like a man about to confess to something bigger than he could contain. She came to me right after you enlisted, he said. Chloe, she said you had asked the school to keep your name off the alumni honors list, that you didn't want the attention. I didn't question it. I tilted my head. You didn't think it was strange. He hesitated. I did. But it was Chloe. She was always so certain, so composed. She made it sound like she was protecting your wishes. She even forwarded an email chain to the school board asking for the removal of your name. Said it was for consistency, that since you'd left the Ivy League path, it might confuse the narrative. The narrative, I repeated the words, slicing through my teeth like glass. He looked ashamed. I didn't respond to the thread. I didn't stop it. I just let it happen. I stood slowly, walked to the file cabinet behind me, and placed a hand on its cold metal edge. Something inside me wanted to scream. But training teaches you to wait, to observe, to strike with purpose, not impulse. She erased me, I said softly, not just from dinner tables or party invites. She erased me from history. Jason looked down. That's not all. A knock at the door. Melissa stepped in, holding a folder with both hands, like it weighed something sacred. I found it, she said, walking in. The nomination form. Your Medal of Honor file from 2018. I stared at it. I thought the board never submitted it. They didn't, she said. But not because of bureaucracy. She opened the folder and split out a printed email, old grainy, but readable. At the top was Chloe's name, her DOJ address, and her signature at the bottom. Subject Medal of Honor submission. Lieutenant Jen R. Cole. Note: General Cole has expressed a strong desire for anonymity. Please do not pursue further recognition without direct consent. My jaw tightened. I never wrote that. I know, Melissa said. But she had access, and she was your emergency contact at the time. I blinked. The weight of it pressed into my ribs. Melissa added, she told the nomination committee you'd withdrawn your consent. The board dropped it without ever contacting you. Jason's voice was hollow. She didn't just remove your name from a list. She removed your name from legacy. I turned away, swallowing a sudden sting in my throat. It wasn't just jealousy or rivalry. Chloe had crafted a version of me so small, so invisible, that even my victories vanished under her approval. A soft vibration buzzed from Jason's phone. He checked it, frowned, then looked up at me. She's planning something worse, he said. Chloe's organizing alumni. She's calling it a restoration effort. A vote to block your new nomination from going through. Says it'll protect the integrity of the alumni brand. I met his eyes. She's rewriting the past, I said. But I'm still here, and I still remember. Being forgotten is one thing. being rewritten. That's war. The reunion auditorium smelled faintly of lemon polish and old carpet, the scent of manufactured reverence. Rows of folding chairs had been neatly arranged, adorned with maroon ribbons and tiny gold seals, bearing the crest of the class of 2003. On stage, a banner read, "Legacy and Leadership," celebrating 20 years of excellence. I stood at the back arms, crossed my military blazer, buttoned cleanly over a cream blouse. I hadn't been invited, but today wasn't about invitations. It was about presence. On the stage, Chloe adjusted the microphone. Her smile was precise, her movements rehearsed. She wore a tailored ivory suit and pearl earrings. To the untrained eye, she radiated poise. Success, she began, is not about medals or mystique. It's about showing up day after day, about building something others can trust. Applause rippled through the crowd. Alumni, current students, a smattering of media, reporters scribbled notes, camera phones flicked up. She continued, "My sister once said she preferred to serve in silence. But silence can be misleading. Silence lets myths grow in the cracks of truth." A murmur rose. Someone near the press section whispered, "Wait, isn't her sister a general?" Chloe smiled faintly, as if she hadn't heard. "Real leadership," she added, "doesn't come from titles. It comes from showing up when it matters." Melissa found me near the side aisle and pressed a manila folder into my hand. "It's all in there," she said softly. "Doe acknowledgement, the nomination memo, and that photo." I nodded as Chloe wrapped up with a line about legacy, built on clarity. I stepped forward, voices hushed. A few gasps, chairs creaked as heads turned. I walked up the central aisle, my boots echoed sharp against the carpeted wood. The alumni board chair, an elderly man with tired eyes and a silver tie, noticed me, his brow furrowed. "Lieutenant General Cole," he said, voice unsure. I met his gaze, requesting 3 minutes at the podium. Chloe had frozen. Someone from the press whispered, "That's her. That's the sister." The chair hesitated, then gave a slight nod. I climbed the steps. Chloe stood to the side, lips tight. I didn't look at her. I faced the crowd, hundreds of eyes, a mix of awe, confusion, doubt. I didn't speak. Instead, I opened the folder. From inside, I pulled out a single photograph. Me, in full dress uniform, standing at NATO command. I was saluting a silver star, gleaming on my shoulder, next to General Aubrey Klein, the day I'd received the classified commendation no civilian had ever seen. I held the photo up high and steady. The room went utterly silent. I didn't need applause. I just needed 1 second of their attention earned, not demanded. I lowered the photo slowly. The room remained still, a breath held tight in collective lungs. From the edge of the stage, Melissa gave a small nod. I stepped forward. "My name is Rebecca Cole." I began, voice even unshaken. "Class of 2003, first chair in orchestra, founder of the International Relations Club, voted most likely to be a professor." That one didn't age well. A soft ripple of laughter, tentative. I continued. "I served because I believed in a country that didn't always believe in me. I didn't wear a name badge for approval. I wore one to remind me of purpose." From my folder, I held up a thin packet, copies of operation briefs, with redacted code names, letters of commendation, the nomination record Melissa had uncovered. These are parts of a life lived beyond this room. Not glamorous, not loud, but real. I didn't look at Chloe, though I felt her presence like a vibration at the edge of my spine. Instead, I scanned the crowd faces I once knew, students watching from the aisles, reporters hovering near the exits. I won't name names. I said, voice firm, because this isn't about anyone else's story. It's about mine, about those who serve quietly, who show up not for attention, but because not showing up would mean someone else might pay the price. I paused, then added, "Some of us protect in silence. That doesn't make our stories invisible." Camera shutters clicked. Someone near the front wiped at their eyes. "I'm not here for praise," I said. "I'm here to remind you that truth is louder than applause and far harder to silence." I turned slightly, letting my eyes land just over the crowd. "You can erase names from walls, but not from memory, and certainly not from history." With that, I stepped back from the I descended the stairs, passing rows of alumni and students, some leaning forward, some blinking away surprise, others nodding slowly. As I reached the back of the auditorium, the alumni board chair stepped onto the stage. Clearing his throat, he adjusted his glasses, glanced toward me, then spoke into the mic. "It's time we corrected a mistake. General Cole, your name belongs on our wall." When the call came from the White House, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired, but ready. The early morning hum of the Pentagon was always the same. Hallways, 2 wide lights, 2 white footsteps swallowed in a rhythm of purpose. My office sat tucked behind layers of clearance, but that morning it felt strangely exposed, like the silence knew. Colonel Ellison entered without knocking, a rare gesture of respect. He carried a sealed folder, blue and gold marked executive notification. He didn't speak at first, just placed it on my desk and stood back. I opened it slowly. The President of the United States takes great pride in awarding the Medal of Honor to Lieutenant General Rebecca Cole for acts of valor above and beyond the call of duty. The words blurred slightly, not from emotion, at least not the kind people expected. I wasn't crying. I wasn't smiling. I was absorbing. "It's public," Ellison said. "Next week, South Lawn, full ceremony." I nodded. Who else knows media's embargoed until noon? But Melissa's outside. She knows. I looked out the glass. Melissa was pacing with her phone earbuds and scanning headlines. I opened the door and she spun around. "Have you seen it yet?" she asked breathlessly. "The articles are everywhere. The silent general. She led. She vanished. She returned. Even the Post has a front page spread." She pulled out her phone. Listen to this quote. "She carried the burden of command without ever asking for a podium. Now the country insists she stand on one." She looked up at me, eyes bright. "Rebecca, it's happening." I managed a small smile. Feels strange. Strange, like I've been underwater for years and someone just turned on the sun. Her expression softened. "You earned this." Before I could respond, my secure line lit up. A presidential liaison officer came on the screen, young Polish to rehearsed. "General Cole, the president would also like to discuss a defense advisory role for civilian military integration oversight. You'll receive formal documentation by week's end." I blinked slowly. "Thank you." He nodded. "And congratulations, ma'am, on behalf of the nation." After he disconnected, I stepped outside, not into the crowd, just down the side path behind the building, where the night sky lingered a little longer in the shade. I walked without direction, hands in pockets, boots silent on gravel, no cameras, no salutes, no one calling my name, just breath and air and memory. Near a low bench, I stopped, sat, looked up. "So this is what being seen feels like," I whispered, strained. The wind rustled nearby trees. Somewhere, a distant car door slammed. When I returned to my quarters, the lights were still off. A small envelope sat on the floor, slipped neatly under the door frame. No stamp, just a name in elegant ink. Return address, Chloe Cole. I opened Chloe's letter expecting damage control. Instead, I found a memory. The envelope had no embellishment, no logo, just my name written in her steady, looping cursive. Inside was a single card with faint watercolor borders and 4 words in the center. "Can we talk? See below that a place and time, Sunday, 10:30 a.m. Maison Brûlée, downtown Seattle. No flourish, no manipulation, just an ask." That morning, the cafe was quiet, its windows fogged from the cold, the hum of the espresso machine. The only background music. I arrived early, ordered black coffee, and sat in the corner booth by the window. Civilian clothes, no uniform, no rank. Chloe arrived 10 minutes late alone. She wore no makeup, her hair tied back in a loose braid. Her eyes were rimmed with fatigue, but not from sleep deprivation. This was emotional erosion, the look of someone who had stopped pretending to win. She sat across from me, didn't ask if she could, just did. For a long moment, we said nothing. The clink of ceramic cups and distant murmurs of baristas filled the space between us. Then she slid a small velvet box across the table. I opened it slowly. Inside was a photo aged at the corners, slightly faded. 2 girls, maybe 8 and 11, dressed in matching Halloween camouflage costumes, both saluting, one grinning wide, the other smaller one staring dead, serious at the camera. "You kept this?" I asked softly. "I almost threw it out 6 times," she replied. But I couldn't. I looked at her. She wasn't performing. She wasn't building a narrative. I spent 20 years trying to outrun your shadow, she said, voice low. Turns out I built that shadow myself. I didn't respond. I just let her talk. I thought if I was louder, more visible, I could catch up, she said. But no matter what I did, there was always you. Quiet, constant. And I hated how much I resented it. I hated how much I admired it. Her fingers trembled as she reached for her cup. She didn't lift it, just held it. I didn't want you to disappear, she whispered. I just didn't know how to exist next to you. For the first time in 2 decades, I saw the sister I'd grown up with, not the polished prosecutor, not the media strategist, just Chloe, the girl who used to crawl into my bunk during thunderstorms and whisper, "Don't leave first." I reached across the table and laid my hand gently on hers. Her breath caught. Then maybe now, I said quietly, we stop running. It wasn't about medals. It was never about medals. But standing on that stage, I finally let myself feel proud. The air on the South Lawn held a kind of stillness that felt rehearsed, ceremonial, and unbreakable. A white canopy stretched across the center of the space, flanked by rows of seats. In tight military symmetry, uniforms gleamed, flags fluttered. The orchestra played softly in the background, subdued, reverent. I stood at attention, my service blues immaculate, every ribbon and bar aligned with years of silence. My gloves were crisp white, my spine a line of steel. Beyond the platform, hundreds of eyes watched. Cadets, generals, senators, families. And somewhere in the third row, Chloe sat beside Melissa, hands clasped, face unreadable. She clapped with the others. No fanfare. Just presence. The president, a man with an unshakable calm, approached the podium. Today he began. We honor not just a soldier, but a sentinel, a woman who walked through 20 years of conflict, diplomacy, and secrecy, not seeking fame, but protecting others from its cost. He paused, scanning the crowd. Lieutenant General Rebecca Cole chose silence. But it is time we speak her name aloud. It is time we say thank you. The audience stood. Applause rang through the lawn. Not thunderous, but steady, grounded, earnest. He turned, took the blue ribbon from the box. With slow, practiced care, he placed it around my neck. The gold star gleamed in the spring sunlight. For the first time in a long while, I allowed my chest to rise fully. Somewhere in the crowd, a child clapped louder than the rest. A veteran near the back removed his cap and held it to his chest. As I turned to descend the steps, a young cadet in dress grays stood rigidly at the foot of the stairs. She couldn't have been more than 19. Her chin lifted slightly. "Thank you, ma'am," she said, saluting. I returned the gesture with a nod, saying nothing. I reached the podium again this time. For words, I used to believe silence was strength, I said quietly. That to serve meant to disappear. But I've learned something else. I paused. We don't serve for applause. But sometimes, it's good to know we were never truly invisible. The applause came again, softer this time. Reflective. I turned back to the president, offering my hand. He shook it firmly, then leaned in, voice low, but firm enough to carry only to me. "You're not done yet, General." They offered me a desk in the West Wing. I chose a classroom in Fort Liberty. The lecture hall wasn't grand, just beige walls, scuffed floors, and the faint hum of aging ventilation. But to me, it was perfect. 30 cadets sat at attention, notebooks open, eyes alert. The name on the podium read, Lieutenant General Cole Rhett. But the title mattered less now. I was there to teach, not to impress. Today's seminar, Ethical Leadership in Asymmetric Environments. We talk through real-world dilemmas, how to lead when no one's watching, how to act when the rules blur. One cadet, sharp freckles, maybe 20, asked, "Ma'am, what do you do when the system works against you?" I met her gaze. "You lead anyway," I said, "and you document everything." They laughed softly. But they understood. These young women weren't here to play dress-up. They were preparing for the reality of pressure failure and quiet victories. I saw myself in all of them and hoped they'd have easier paths, but no less courage. Midway through the afternoon, a knock at the back. "Chloe, no makeup again?" She wore jeans, a navy blazer, and held a small camera bag. She gave a sheepish wave as I approached. "Hope I'm not interrupting," she said. "You're on campus?" I asked. "I'm working with a team on a docuseries, Women in Command. Thought I'd start where I should have started Years ago. I raised an eyebrow. That's a long way from podcast snark. She shrugged. People change. Before I could reply, Melissa appeared behind her. She grinned, holding up a book mock-up, leading in silence lessons from the field. Publishers interested, she said. They are seeking collaborators. Are you in? I glanced back and forth between the two of them. My sister and my former classmate, both transformed by revelations we never anticipated confronting. I gave a single nod. Let's get it just right. In the classroom, the cadets had assembled close to the front. One displayed a vibrant poster board, artfully crafted with colorful markers. Figures adorned in uniforms and medals surround me, while my face sits in the balance of shadow and light at the center. At the top, in elegant, flowing script, our leader. I forced down the tightness in my throat. Thank you, I said, my voice heavy with emotion. After taking a moment to clear my throat, I turned to the class and began to speak. Leadership isn't about raising your voice. It's about being present when the challenges are greatest. They nodded, jotted down notes, and sat a bit taller. As the session drew to a close, I made my way back to my desk. A solitary red light flickered on the encrypted tablet nestled within my briefcase. I carefully opened it. Subject Ghost Viper requires observation. Immediate attention. Needed Cyber Task Force. Significant danger. Code Black clearance activated. I gazed at the message, my heart still yet poised for what was to come. I was never gone. I was just fulfilling my responsibilities. In the places where I remained hidden from view, the corridor was infused with the scent of newly polished wood and the crispness of printer ink, a blend that felt both fresh and oddly comforting. The banners hung in a deep maroon, a hue that had remained unchanged through the years, while the school seal glimmered in gold, proudly displayed on the wall by the entrance. The Hall of Legacy held a gentle stillness, merely a passageway, adorned with bronze nameplates and framed photographs that linger in quiet elegance. I stood near the back, hands clasped behind my uniformed back. This time, there was no platform for the unfolding drama. Without any formalities, a gathering of students in neatly pressed blazers, faculty members dressed in formal attire, and alumni standing along the walls, all enveloped in a hushed atmosphere of respect. Chloe stood next to the podium, gripping a lone sheet of paper tightly in her hands. She looked up at me when our eyes connected, and then she started to speak. She offered her support quietly. Without the need for recognition, Chloe read with a steady voice. Yet now we opt to truly see her, not for the title, not for the accolades, yet it was due to her unwavering principles, even in the absence of an audience. A moment of stillness. She is my sister, and even more significantly, she's a person from whom I've gained valuable insights. She gracefully stepped down. I gave a small nod, feeling uncertain about my next move. Melissa stood there as well, dressed in a navy dress and flats, her hands cradling a well-loved copy of our book manuscript. She had arrived the previous night, assuring me that everything would be straightforward and uneventful. And I had taken her at her word until she caught me off guard with a quote from our book featured in the event program. True leadership is not measured by the sound of applause. It resonates in decisions. The audience stirred with anticipation as the veil was drawn back from the plaque. My name is a reflection of my journey, the year I graduated from my class. The straightforward expression below it, Rebecca Cole, honesty and quietude. No titles, nothing extravagant. Simply that, the faculty delivered a brief address, touching on the theme of conviction, emphasizing that true strength lies not in volume, but in enduring impact. I hardly caught a word of it. My gaze wandered to the corner, where 5 cadets stood in uniform, their arms at their sides, exuding pride and stillness. Melissa appeared next to me as the crowd's whispers swelled, capturing moments with their cameras. "How are you doing?" she inquired gently. I inhaled deeply, not profound, perfectly sufficient. "It's not about leaving a mark," I said. "It's about ensuring that everything falls into place as it should." She offered a warm smile and gently placed her hand on my shoulder. A voice whispered from behind us, "She is the one who has taken action." I shifted a bit. A young cadet, barely 19, was gently prodding her fellow classmate. Her eyes were bright, her expression sincere. I remained silent. Instead, I took a step back from the plaque. Allow them to capture the moments they desire. Allow them to voice the sentiments I had been deprived of. As I stepped outside, the echo of my footsteps faded into the smooth, gleaming surface beneath me. Only the quiet remains, filled with depth and significance, devoid of sound or distraction, and after years of silence, erasure, and quiet dignity, Rebecca's name was finally inscribed, not just in bronze, but in the hearts of those who remembered her. The woman who was once dismissed as unnoticed now emerged as a beacon of authenticity in a world filled with clamor and superficiality. Her narrative served as a poignant reminder that justice, even when postponed, can arrive with the force of a storm, unmistakably earned and irrefutable. When faced with injustice, a calm resilience can amplify the truth beyond the reach of any falsehood. Sometimes, it only takes one individual standing firm to illuminate the way for others, much like how Rebecca's journey might have touched your heart. Share your thoughts if you experienced the deep sense of injustice and the powerful journey of redemption. Share your thoughts in the comments if you would have approached it in another way. Your voice matters to us. Join us and spread the word if you feel that honesty will always make itself heard.